there was this moment where it was lightning in a bottle, the opportunity presented itself, and it was like, if you don't do this now, then it's your own fault. I just jumped in.
What's going on, everybody? It's Webster Style, the man, the voice, the fragrance. Here with someone who you saw when we were down at BlurCon, which is in my neck of the woods, right outside of Washington, D.C. But one of the things I loved about BlurCon and love about it in general, especially this year, they were just a host of different creators I'd never seen before, with a varying array of different properties, genres, and one of them I was able to talk to briefly, and now we get a little bit more depth into everything, is Mr. Byran Covington. Brian, how you doing, man?
Doing great, man. Doing great. I'm working in my creative space, living the dream. So good stuff. Good stuff. You doing well?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. It's a hectic day. It's always a hectic day. All there's so many moving pieces when it comes to real life and doing this on the internet as
Yeah.
well. So it's
Yeah. I
always
know.
something going on, something needs to be done. But I'm living, I'm breathing, and I'm able to be here talking to you right now. So I'm good. Can't complain.
Understood. Understood.
So when we last saw each other, and I see in the background, we got a brief synopsis of your property Between Magic and Dreams. Let's give everybody a refresher. What is Between Magic and Dreams about?
Okay. Well, Between Magic and Dreams is an urban fantasy story, and it takes place in Atlanta, Georgia. And I did that, specifically because one, I like to write what I know, but two, New York gets everything. So let's step outside of that, stereotype. Um, but yeah, this is an urban fantasy piece that follows a college student by the name of Kwen Phifer, and he's fighting to preserve our reality during the rebirth of the world of magic, which is happening through this phenomenon known as new light. And it appears that these pillars of light that slowly meander throughout the city. And as it turns out, this is a side effect of a science experiment, but moreover, it's also a beacon, which is bringing about the renaissance of the world of magic.
So I love the duality with science bringing about a rebirth of magic. One of the things, especially in a lot of properties now, they either go magic is a type of science or
Mhm.
magic is something totally different, or they're always at odds against each other. It's
Mhm.
interesting that you utilize science as a way of bringing magic back. Now, what sort of inspirations did you have for this? And I'm pretty sure, just based on what you said, there are probably a whole lot of influences you have there.
All right, so I could say it's everything from Dungeons and Dragons, which I didn't get introduced to as an actual role play game until I was like in college. Then of course there's video games and RPGs and whatnot. But also a huge influence was my mom. Or I should say is, because she's still with me. Yeah. But but yeah, she was my introduction to sci-fi. She was my introduction to anime. Um, and from there forward, it was reading. And she had volumes of what is now legends as far as Star Wars is concerned. And all of that. And once the new house was built, my dad put a library in the house for her. And from that point forward, I kept thinking, I got to get in this library. So
Right.
I had the ideas and the stories are always kicking around, but I never wrote a full length novel. It was always short stories. So yeah, if once there was this moment where it was lightning in a bottle, the opportunity presented itself, and it was like, if you don't do this now, then it's your own fault. I just
Yes.
jumped in with both feet, and I was like, all right, let's make it happen.
Understood. It's always moms, because moms what got me into sci-fi and horror, especially Star Trek. Like
Yeah.
that was her. She got me in. And I tell people all the time, um, I was watching things I should not have been watching at that age, especially in the 80s with those horror movies. Like, yeah, but I blame
Mhm.
my mom. And my love of Star Trek definitely comes from her, just science fiction in general. So that's what we did. So I
Same.
totally understand. And even my mom used to get the I remember they were quarterly, but it was these little sci-fi story digest, forget exactly what they were called, and so I used to read those as well. So I totally could put myself in your shoes in that regard, as far as moms having that bug bite us at a very young age and growing up with that. So you're into this library. You finally say, "Hey, let me dive in and do this." How many books have you written in the series so far?
Thus far, it's two.
Okay.
The third one I'm working on now. I hope to have it out by the end of the year, but once you kind of finish the manuscript and put it in the hands of editors and all these
Mhm.
guys, then it's kind of left up to how quickly they can kick it out. But I've there's so much story to tell, and I'm trying to utilize different mediums to
Mhm.
expound on these stories.
Mhm.
But for the meat and potatoes, I wanted to do the novel or the audiobook, which is interchangeable now. But
Right.
thus far, it's been great, man. But bouncing between mediums, I learned very quickly that they're completely different monsters.
Right.
But I'm navigating it as best I can. I've got great people around me. I've got real
Mhm.
mentors that are quick to answer whatever questions I have and are happy to actually, aid me in this journey because the fewer mistakes you make, the better things will go. But it's best to have somebody to show you where those pratfalls are, you
Right.
know, and do so because they want to see you succeed, not because they want something from
Right. So, what prompted you to expand your medium from just the novelization to comics as well?
Actually, that was twofold. So one, it's always a treat to see another artist's rendition of the characters that you have in your head, you know.
Hmm.
But secondly, I wanted to find a way to introduce the story to people who typically wouldn't read novels.
Hmm.
Even if you were to suggest listening to the audiobook, you still have to give them something um, that would be in their usual norm of consuming, as far as animation or whatever entertainment it is. So the
Right.
reason I went with comics is because one, you get the visual and you can get the story, and if they like these characters enough and they would like to know more, then that content is there, right?
Right.
And also letting them know that beyond this, there's going to be more. So if you want something that's not so finite, then you could jump in here and then go back, take in the rest of the story, and know that there's so much more coming down the pipeline.
Okay. Now, with the comics, now the comics, are they a retelling of the novels, or are they a totally different story set in the same universe?
Actually, I guess there's a third reason because in this catastrophe brought about by the new light,
Hmm.
you have a city of millions of people. Everybody is going to be affected by this, but not always in the same ways. Some people might see it as an opportunity. Some people might see it as the world ending. Some
Hmm.
people may look at it as, oh man, this is what we've been waiting for, a hard reset. We don't know, but by telling other people's stories in the same predicament, not only does it kind of highlight the fact that um, everyone experiences things differently, but it also shows that your life is valid, right?
Right.
You're going to see, and your point of view is not invalid because you're not the main character. In fact, by doing this, by putting Cortez as the head of the comic book, it highlights the fact that each one of us is the protagonist of our own story.
Hmm.
So he's on a completely different journey than the main character in the novel, but the story runs congruently because Cortez shows up in the first and the second novel. But when our protagonist leaves him in the second novel, he's in this really weird situation, and we don't see what happens because we're following the main protagonist. Hence, the story for the comic is called Meanwhile, and it tells what happens after our protagonist leaves. So
Okay.
technically, this three-issue comic is its own full story.
Hmm.
But if you're reading the novel as well, then it's supplementary material and it fills in blanks that you may have had if you had read and wondered, well, how did things turn out with that? You know?
Understood. That I think that's like it reminds me of like the old. I mean, it still happens now, but you have those comic crossovers where
Yeah,
you have the main story, and then you have maybe there's a side book where it tells what happened during this instances going on in the main storyline, so you get a bigger picture of what's really happening in the world outside of the main story. And also those books are used to, once the whole crossover is over, you can really see the impacts of like this world changing sort of event, what sort of impact it had, not just on the main characters, but how it rippled throughout the entire universe as well. So I think that is a really awesome way, but also a awesome thing, but also an excellent way of getting people maybe to move over to the novels themselves, because it's a very visual, good gateway. Like, oh, this is an amazing sort of story. Let me see what's going on in the books, sort of thing.
yeah, yeah. And that's, I think it's cool too to have given them the option of the audiobook,
Hmm.
because again, sometimes you're like, man, I just don't have time to just sit and read like I used to. I'm like, don't worry about it. You folding the laundry, taking a long
Hmm.
trip, I got you. Just jump in with this, and you can just hold while you listen.
Right. Exactly. Now, how many comics are out so far?
Three.
Okay, three. So those three, is it they tell a complete story, or is it still part of an ongoing sort of? Okay, all right,
Yeah.
cool.
Now, technically, yes, it is ongoing. Like if
Okay,
you want to see what happens after the events of the comic, that leads directly into the third novel.
okay.
So remember, Quinn's story, who's the main character of the main novel, and
Hmm.
Cortez, they run congruently because they're all in the same city at the same time. This
Right,
just tells what happens when he's not with the main character.
right. Okay. Now, let me back up a little bit to something you said earlier. You talked about RPGs. What are some of your favorite RPGs of all time?
Number one, top of the list, will always be Final Fantasy VII.
Okay.
That was my doorway. I did see other games before that, and they were all just the sprite games. But
Hmm.
that was when we were jumping into the world of 3D, and as blocky as those characters were, it was like that was choice.
Right, right.
And
Awesome.
my
Yeah.
favorite character out of that was Vincent Valentine.
It was interesting. I really enjoy RPGs. I did not get into, like, I knew of Final Fantasy 7 because I mean I was playing games when that came out, and like my boys had it. And I remember one of my frat brothers, he taped the battle with him and Sephiroth, and I watched that.
Yeah.
So it was cool. But I did not get into RPGs, and as we're recording this, is just shy of 25 years since the Dreamcast dropped on 9/9/99.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was that was the first system I bought myself. So that's what I got into RPGs. And my first one was it was Evolution. So I played that series 1 and 2.
Mhm.
And then what really got me was Grandia 2. Like that game was
Oh yeah,
amazing. Uh,
yeah.
and then I ended up Skies of Arcadia on Dreamcast. Sega, like we need a remaster. We just need a port of that, honestly. So those are games I've loved. I remember playing, like I guess it was Dragon Warrior when they brought us to NES, but Dragon
Mhm.
Quest One or whatever. And I didn't play it on NES. I played it on. I had a AudioVox Windows CE PDA, like my first year of grad school. So I downloaded the ROM and I was playing it on that. So I guess technically that was my first RPG I really played. But yeah, the pixel stuff, it never gravitated to me. Even like Final Fantasy 7, like I appreciate it now, and I've gone back and played a little bit of it just kind of understand. But once we got into that what 128-bit era with the
Mhm.
Dreamcast, that's when RPGs really got to me. Like even back in the day, my boy Tori, we were living together one summer when we were working. He bought that was the summer Legend of Dragoon came out. So I'm in there watching him play the game and whatnot. We geeking out to everything that's going on. So I'm like, I have a deep love for it, but I didn't really get into it until that time period of games. And now I guess for me, like my favorite RPG of all time has to be nice to the Old Republic. Like that game.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
man, that
that was
I'm replaying that now as well as Knights 2, and that game just it floored me because I remember like I bought it that summer it came out and I played it pretty much nonstop up until it came out June, July of '03.
mm,
And I played it nonstop and I finally beat it like that October.
hmm
And that was literally like the only game I played that and a little bit of Final Fantasy Online because it was on my
hmm
Xbox at the time. But that was literally like the only game I played for those few months there because it was just such an amazing game.
that
And then
game
the
was so
last one I
great.
really got into was Lost Odyssey on the 360. Haven't done so much RPG because my time is just not what it used to be since then. But in the last like Xbox One generation and even current generation, and I still dabble with them now and again, but RPGs are just when they're good, they're good. And you talk about uh Final Fantasy 7 and other games we talked about as well. They're just really a pinnacle of what RPG is supposed to be like. So I understand how something like that can really help to inspire you
Yeah,
before between Magic and Dreams.
thank you, man. Yeah, I mean, my whole thing was, and I tell people this fairly often, and is I'm an avid gamer, but I can't do both at the same time.
Yes,
So because
yes,
I like to be immersed in the game, you know.
yes.
So that being the case, my backlog is really beating me up.
Goodness. Oh, my backlogs. And there, one of the things about Xbox Live Gold from back in the day before they phased it out, they gave all these free games, and I'd been on Xbox Live for 20 years
Mhm.
now. And so I I made I let my Game Pass lapse for like a couple days. And I went to see because how it used to structure used to be is you have like the 360 games they gave you, like those things you owned. But
Mhm.
the other games that were like Xbox One and yeah, Xbox One era, you didn't. So you still needed Xbox Live to access them. Well, without Game Pass, everything was owned. So I had 430 games that I owned. I'm like, I haven't even played half of these. Like, open them up, touch them. I was like, goodness. So yeah, the backlog is real. I think the digital era because everything is so much more accessible and you
Yeah.
kind of got it and it's there and it's not I can imagine 400 plus games in this room right now
Mhm.
but everything is right there accessible either directly on my Xbox or on the cloud.
Mhm.
So it's amazing. So now our backlogs are growing and like you said we don't have that time like we used to, especially when you're doing other things. I tell people all the time, um I am literally in front of a computer
Mhm.
a lot of times if I'm not doing the job that pays me. I'm doing interviews, I'm editing video, and then you got other things going on. When you're really in your passion, as much as big gamers we are, it doesn't leave a lot of time for these sort of immersive that we like. So when we get the chance to, like, watch out.
That's right. I mean, I already know the order that I want to attack these, and I'm like, all right, after this third book, I'm gonna focus on marketing because apparently that's the Achilles heel for a lot of us. So I'm gonna focus on marketing, do some side content because I already got a few things already on the fire. But aside from that, I gotta catch up on my gaming, I gotta
Hmm.
catch up on my movies, and I gotta catch up on my comics. Because there's a ton of stuff that I got that I want to do reviews for, and I just haven't been able to just sit down and knock it out yet. So I got a lot of goals for next year.
That I look, I understand all of that totally. There's so many things that I want to do just from a creative standpoint. And a lot of things I've been working on for years, I just haven't pulled the trigger on because there's always something to do, always something you're working on. It's like I wish there were like three of me sometimes.
Mhm.
A whole lot more we get done. So I'm not gonna hold you too much longer, but Brian, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Are you into fragrances at all?
Um, sure. Well, okay, not me, but I
Okay.
love, have my lady smell nice, and my
Okay.
daughter, of course, who is fighting me tooth and nail on it. But I'm sure she'll ease into it.
I don't have that issue though. uh, so all right, cool. So tell everybody where Kay can find Between Magic and Dreams.
All right. So as stated earlier, I'm Brian D. Covington, author of Between Magic and Dreams. You can find that pretty much wherever you buy books. But if you buy it from betweenmagicandreams.com, every book and everything else that I send as far as comics and whatnot will come signed by yours truly.
Nice. All right, man. Appreciate it. Everybody, that should have flashed across your screen. If not, everything's will be in the show notes. Brian, thank you for your time, man. I appreciate it. You guys know your website, the man of voice of fragrance. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your listening. And remember, stay safe out there and be blessed. Peace.
Peace.
Well, hello, hello, baby. This is your lovely Misty Stone, and you are watching Webster Style with me,